So let's talk about the Knight of Wands. He's the Lord of the Flame and the Lightning, the King of the Spirits of Fire. It, anyone who's born between November 13th and December 12th is a Knight of Wands. So that's 1/3 Scorpio, 2/3 Sagittarius. He rules over the Seven of Cups, the Eight of Wands, and the Nine of Wands. The general characteristics of this card and the personality types of the archetype that we're working with here. Duquette, in his book, couldn't give this character more praise. He says that it's potentially the strongest of the core cards. It's got a lot going for them. They do. They value creativity and innovation in a great way. They really push and inspire it. They even have a synergy that happens where they inspire and they get inspired by inspiring, and it works really well for them, and it's nice. It's a nice way that they can interact with others. They're very active people. They're always on the move. They can be involved in a lot of different things all at once, and so one of the drawbacks can be that they're always busy. They're always doing something. They're spontaneous, and this comes out in a couple different ways. They've got an emotional depth to them, and so combine that with their spontaneity, and that makes them somewhat of a romantic. And it makes them somewhat reliable in the sense of if the shit is hitting the fan and you need to call somebody, you can go get these people up out of bed. They're great to have around because they're good to have in a crisis situation, but they're also impulse driven, and so their impulse to, yeah, let's go do that thing right now, will take over and they'll come help you. So they're good to have around for that. They're productive. They can accomplish more than most people, and they still seem to have more time left over than everyone else. It's weird. They get a lot of shit done, and they're competent. It's not that they're hastily running through nothing. They get it done right. These people really will work hard and do it the right way. They have also a spiritual connectivity to them, but they may not be pursuing that. But definitely you can get these people going on a spiritual topic. And lastly, they're fierce and commanding. They dominate. They tend to dominate a situation there, or they can. They're inspiring, and people will tend to want to lead those that, or tend to want to be led by those that inspire them. So anytime an ill dignification shows up is anytime that we have people working against us. We are out of our element, so we're in a situation or an environment that we don't like, or out of energy. I don't know if I said that. Talking about all the positives of this card, that isn't to say that they don't have their negatives. If wrongly energized, they're evil-minded, cruel, and bigoted. And yeah, they can definitely be that. They can be explosive and extreme. They go way off the deep end way quick. That escalated quickly is something that you can say around these people quite often. It's wow, they just, it's surprising how fast they can just flip like a switch, isn't it? They can be, if they're not in, whenever they get pushed into this ill-dignification, they're hot-tempered, and they domineer by threats of force and manipulation. Whatever works for them, they can do both. And so they'll emotionally manipulate while threatening with force if they have to. They also have some impulse control problems. They will do things that just popped in their head because it popped in their head. They can also be shallow and lack commitment. This doing things that popped in your head thing doesn't lend itself to a whole lot of commitment, because you want to be free to follow all of your impulses. So being tied down is not something that you do well. In some very extreme cases, it can completely appear like they have no control over their lives, or have no control over their lives. And they can be unreliable. Because of their impulses, they are often late, and they're running on their own time. They're running on their own time, or they say they have no sense of time, which is a lie. They just was doing other shit, and we know they was doing other shit, and they know they was doing other shit, but we'll say they have no sense of time. Sure. So let's talk about their zodiac influence. So they're 2/3 Sagittarius, which is fire. Sagittarius runs from November 23rd to December 21st. Associated with Sagittarius is things like the hips and thighs. So typically they look good from the waist down, if nothing else. Sagittarius is also very good workers. They're hard workers, and they like it. They enjoy putting in good work, and they've got stamina, so they will work hard all day. And they're cheerful and happy too. The Sagittarius is very cheerful and happy, but this also makes them seem extra pissy when they're not, because you're so used to such a happy them that when they're pissy, it's like, damn, you really do. They also have a certain sense of anxiety because of a sense to perform. And so they have a sense of anxiety with them too. They're very enthusiastic. Sagittarius is enthusiastic as hell. They'll jump right in. And sometimes that means, especially, that they'll say things without thinking about it. So they think first, second. They think second, talk first. Yeah, that's the one. They do that. And so sometimes they appear tactless and they say the wrong things and they put their foot in their mouth sometimes. The other third of their card is Scorpio, which runs from October 23rd to November 22nd. Crowley says this is the second most powerful sign of the zodiac, right behind Leo. And so it's water as opposed to fire. And so we've paired that in this card with fire. And so to have the second most powerful sign paired with another fire is definitely a hell of an energy. The first decadent, or the foundational card that they are in state of being, is the Eight of Wands, which is swiftness. So that runs from November 23rd to December 2nd. So if you're born in there, this is your default state, but it's the default state of all of them. It is the beginning of Sagittarius, and it is Mercury is the planetary influence. So it's definitely a communication card. In the best of times, it's clear communication followed by immediate action. That's in the best of case. You say exactly what it is you're after, and then you go and get it and do it. What it is more often than not is hasty communication and too much force too fast. It can be discipline and focus, but that makes you specialized and narrowed viewed. In essence, though, this card really is hitting the ground running. It's energy that is enthusiastic and is ready to go. It does require freedom, though. It wants open space, and it does not want to be pent up. That makes it really start to be uncomfortable. Also, a part of this card's energy is that it's unreliable because it's spontaneity. And they can be led away. I always think it's funny that Sagittarius is represented by the archer, the hunter, and they're so squirrely. It's like, ooh, something shiny. They have squirrel syndrome like a motherfucker, and they're the hunters. Go figure. Also, part of this card is their generosity. They are immediately energized with generosity, and that is oftentimes their initial reaction is to be very generous. When they're not, it leads to theft. And also a subnote on theft, because of this card is such a impulse, theft can also be a part of their character trait. They don't mean to hurt you with it. It's just it looked shiny and they just couldn't help themselves in the moment, kind of thing. But they're typically generous, and so being generous, especially if you're one of these cards is born in this date especially, and you're experiencing a lot of theft in your life, be more generous. It'll help get that to move out of your space. The second state of being that they have is the Nine of Wands, which is strength. It runs from December 3rd through the 12th, and it is the moon in Sagittarius. It is hidden, big, underflowing strength and energy. It is tremendous, steady force, and it's the energy that drives. It is very powerful. And it's in this state that they accomplish so much. And this is why they're so powerful, is that they have access to this strength and this power that allows them to move and accomplish their will. It's in this state that is connected very much with their health. So if they're in this state often, they end up being very healthy, and if they're not very healthy, it makes it more difficult for them to transition into this state. So health is somewhat of a concern for this card because it translates into this key power of theirs a little bit. Also, this strength makes them a bit shallow because it makes them lustful. Lust is very much the joy and desire, and that's how they get access to this tremendous strength. It is because it's kind of a tricky state to get into, you know. There's only a couple ways in. It's sheer force of will and effort that'll get you in, or you need something to motivate you. And typically the big motivators, as we'll see in the next card, is blind faith. That'll work. Or joy and desire. It's going after what you want. So you either need to have faith that it'll work out, or that it's worth going after for you. Or you can just put force into it and make it go. You can force your way into this state of being. And while here, like, you get such an advantage of power, and it's, like I say, that tremendous force. It's Herculean strength. And it can even be applied mentally. And so, even though your card isn't necessarily associated with the mind and being brilliant, you can have these brilliant flashes. And where people are like, holy shit, where did that come from? And so, you know, we didn't know you were genius too. Also, the last thing really associated with this card is victory and coming out on top. If you can manage getting in here, you almost always are assured victory. The third deacon and state of being that you all have is the one that comes at the beginning, and that's the Seven of Cups, debauchery. It's November 13th through November 22nd, and it's Scorpio. If you happen to be born in this section, you are more sensitive than your counterpart and are much more susceptible to blow-ups. Be careful of that. You also probably are more secretive and whatnot. Typically, as you move through, it is modified by dignity. And the problem with this state is that when you come in negatively, it is amplified and it pulls negatively. So all the negative aspects are much more likely to come up. And since this is such a negative card anyway, and it's an unhappy energy, and it's emotional, and it's hard to deal with, the negative aspects of that jump out hard when the negative aspects come in. And so mitigating that is important. But what this card is lying and promises unfulfilled. Try not to make promises. That's just the easiest way to deal with promises unfulfilled, is just to not make promises. If you don't know that you can't keep them because you don't know you can't keep them ever, just don't make them. It makes it much easier for you. Another essence of this card is illusionary success. A lot of times that even comes out as tricking yourself into thinking that you've got a success. It's success gained but not followed up on. So it could be that you've started to win and now you just don't care anymore and you've won enough. And so it dissipates and it falls off. It's also deception in the moment of success. So there are times when you think you know what you're chasing and you put your energy into it and you get it, and it wasn't what you thought. You was deceived in some way. Sometimes that's yourself. Maybe you thought this is what you wanted, but when you got it, you turned out you didn't know what the hell you wanted. Like so often that happens to us. But the core emotional, or the core essence of debauchery is emotional discomfort that leads to seeking escape. So because of that, this in the interpretation of the card in divination is pretty much hands down the drug card of the tarot, and it signifies drunkenness, drug use, sex, which are all pretty much the same thing. It's overindulgence is really the key thing here in pleasures, especially emotional ones. So anything that would drive or tug on your emotions, so definitely drunkenness, because that's the emotional drug of choice. If you're in a prolonged state of this being, or you have trouble with this one, dealing with your feelings and really being in control or expressing your feelings in situations will mitigate the damage that this state will do to you. Now that we understand the three basic states, let's talk about how you all move through those. The basic energy flow, the most healthy energy flow, would be swiftness, strength, debauchery. So you would start with a passion. There would be that spark, that flame. It's a little too much, a little too fast, but to hell with it. We can roll with that. And then there's the hard push. So it's something that inspires you or is driven, and you push on and put in that, you get to that strength, and then you go into debauchery, and then you party. And you let off steam and recharge. And that's the most healthy way for you to go through your cycle. The other way, and the most common, is swiftness, debauchery, strength. So it's passion and spark and hitting the ground running, but then it's giving up or going into the illusionary state of success. You give up, you decide you don't want that thing no more, and then this just dies, and you can come back to swiftness with something else, and just not hit strength like is so often. You just don't hit it. But then you can come back to an idea if enough energy is used. Also, if people help you, if you just start giving up on something, then definitely the people around you can help give you that boost to back you into strength, to get you back into your strength, because it's a positive dignification. People can help you, help us all. One thing to note is that the strength card, so that hard win, almost always goes straight into debauchery. So there's a couple ways to work with that. You can use it effectively, the work hard, play hard, and go through that cycle that way. And that's perfectly healthy. Another way that you can go about it, and the most powerful, is swiftness, strength, swiftness. And that's whenever you're locked into one of your passions. So it's the igniting spark, and then the energy to keep it going, and then another igniting spark because it's something you were passionate about, and then the energy, and then it just keeps going, and it makes you tremendously powerful when you can get into that kind of cycle. It does tend to crash at some point. It's bound to. Another way that you can get your energy to flow is by helping those around you. As you ignite for them, and as you are the strength for them, and as you help them celebrate, it all fuels. Your fuel for them, it's fuel synergy. As you fuel them, they fuel you. And so make sure that if you're in one of these states and you want to move it, that you apply it. And into people around you is a good way to do that. Issues associated with your card come out whenever you're tied to a situation or bogged down. These lead to blow-ups or what seem like random things that just come out of the woodwork. You're tied to a situation, and now some weird event has come out of nowhere, and now you're not. So those are coming. So recognize that anytime you're bogged down or ill-dignified in any way, that you are either headed to some change of circumstance that's out of your control, you can adjust the energy, or a blow up, which is also out of your control, same thing. Or you can adjust the energy and how it's applied and try and take control of the situation a little bit by managing how the energy is flowing. Recharging. So when you all get spent, you need to learn how to recharge quickly, because when you're down and out, it can really, every moment that you're down affects you moving forward. So you need to learn to recharge quickly. Having positive health, again, is kind of connected with that. As you're healthier, you recharge quicker. You will also need to make sure you keep your stimulants in check. How you use those, and, even coffee, it's very much powerful stimulant. And so as you use those, make sure you're using that effectively. I'm not saying don't use stimulants, that you don't need them, that they definitely help. Just be making sure that you're mitigating and using them correctly and efficiently to get the most out of it. You all can be very unreliable and unpredictable because of the nature of your impulse control problems. It makes you somewhat unreliable, and it makes it to where some of the time we have no idea what you're going to do. There's also the tendency to, if your first instinct as you move towards something fails, you have no way to adjust, and you can't straighten out your course, and so there's issues there. Recognize these issues as they are. It's one of those things that it's not going to be something that you can really hope to overcome so much as hope that those around you accept. And you need to understand and be upfront with yourself that you're asking and imposing this on the people around you, and be more accepting of what they impose on you. And that's how we all get along. Other issues show up whenever you all come to grips with how you don't really have control over the life force or events that go on. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't. You're definitely very well greatly connected to the life force, but don't have necessarily direct control. It helps to see it more as swinging a hammer, sledgehammer, or throwing lightning. So you pick your spot and you initiate, but the force itself drives. You don't control where it goes and how it goes, just more directing where it's aimed. So have a target and put your effort in and swing that way. It is an issue that you all have spiritual aptitude, and sometimes ignore it or don't use it, tap into it in any way. And for being a dominant fire card, to not take advantage of your spirituality and that connectivity is just a wasted resource, and that can be an issue. Another main problem that you all will run into is focusing on a past fail. You'll get very blinded by a time that it seems like you trusted your instincts and you was a failure, or you led yourself down the wrong path, something like this. It was a spectacular fail, because let's be honest, every time you fail, it's a pretty spectacular thing. It's always with fireworks, right? Don't be so critical of yourself. It's one of those, it's the byproduct of having such spectacular successes, is that whenever you fail just as well. And so see it for what it is and not be so critical. Also, a lot of times if you look back at what you gained through going through the situation, you'll see that you were right to do the thing that you did for reasons that make only enough sense to you. Advice to deal with these things is to really trust your gut. Your gut instincts are great. That's probably the best in the tarot. It's why you all have that impulse control problem, is because your instincts are good. And you can be reliably impulsive once you get good at it. The reason for this is that sensation, that gut instinct, that's God talking to you. And that's how he communicates to you, or at least it's how it starts. You develop it from there. You see it for what it is, and then you develop a relationship. But you have great instincts, always trust your gut. You need to find outlets for both your impulses and for variety. You need a way to channel you know you're going to be impulsive. So if you can find good ways for your impulses to work for you, that can be beneficial. It takes some creativity, but you're plenty creative, so put your creativity on it. Also, variety. If you can work variety into your life so that things aren't always the same, don't have dinner on schedules, or at least what you're eating. Anyway, don't schedule what you're eating. You need more variety than that. That's a good way to just add variety to your life. Is that kind of brainstorming. Setting goals, not expectations. A good example of this is a car. Let's say you need a car and you decide you need $5,000 to get a car. Well, what you've just done is you've changed the goal of getting a car and set an expectation of how you're going to achieve that. And you're going to get $5,000. And that's the only way now that you've decided to get this thing. And you've cut off the universe in its ways that it has that can help you. And so it's important for us not to stifle the universe and focus on our goals and not set any limiting expectations. So trying to rethink the way that you're looking at things and move forward in that kind of a mode of thinking is important. You need people around you that you can trust. You need people that can criticize you and tell you when you're off course and help you make adjustments, and that you can lean into for energy and whatnot. Basically, you need to have tense confidence in your abilities at all times. You need to move forward knowing that you've got this, but just have it be just tense enough so that you can hear their criticism and improve yourself because it's not that they're not picking at your faults. You have very few of those. They're helping you improve your strengths. It is more how you need to look at it. One of the things that'll really help you in situations is becoming discerning at whether or not you should be in control or not from the get-go. If you should be in control, quickly take control and just step in that role, and it'll make things easier because there won't be that change later which has given you so much trouble in the past. Just go ahead up front and take it, and you'll be better off for it. If you're not, then step off. You have a tendency to want to backseat drive. Don't do that. Either be in control or don't. Go for assisting the command if you're not. You're driving their orders rather than enforcing your own. So don't backseat drive. Navigate. Another thing that you can do that's really good for you all is to get involved in one of the metaphysical sciences, especially one of them focused around energy control and charging. Being down and out is bad for you all. It's bad for us whenever you all are down and out. We need you. And so having an ability that allows you to recharge yourself is very beneficial to all of us. So getting involved in one of the metaphysical sciences that makes that a focus is definitely advice that I stand on for you all. Definitely, you need it. Be careful with it, but definitely be very kind and generous to those that you care about and crush everyone in your way, because sometimes we need the driven will of victory in times. Sometimes the right side needs to win from time to time. And so if you're on that side and you're pushing that, just crush everything in your way. Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, but don't let anything stop you. So what's your role? What's your role? What do you play? What are you supposed to be doing? Mainly, basically, to boil it down, is that you help everyone. Okay? It can feel like the world demands a little bit extra from you, but most of the time you have you have enough energy for everyone and everything around you. You've got it. You should see it more as an enjoyment that you lack routine and have so many opportunities that you get whenever you are able to be involved in so many people's lives and projects. Because you do get a lot of opportunities that you couldn't have expected out of them. You very much as a role, you are a leader. If you're not, you're an assistant to the leader, and you work very well in that. You also are a very good cheerleader because fundamentally you're a driver. All right. Some of the cards and personalities need driven. They need energy. They need people to drive them. You are the drivers of the world. Your interest in people and their projects it helps them. Your happy enthusiasm in their projects and your encouragement adds energy to them. It's how you can exchange energy with people and help fuel them. And it gives you a release for the energy too. You know, as it's coming through you, if it just stays pent up, it starts to go all wonky, and you need somewhere for it to go. And you can just push that into people by encouraging them and being happy. You inspire. You're a muse. You have a strong influence. So really try hard not to be negative, because as you negatively influence, that's the energy you're sending out there. And the world needs more positive energy, and you need more positive energy, and it really starts with you. You can't be looking for good energy to be coming back at you when you are supplying the energy that goes into the world. So if you're, you get it. Your enthusiasm, you encourage, and your energy, and you're the energy that moves the world. Once it's placed on a solid foundation, it drives this world, and that's what you all do. And so put energy into everything and learn how to really get it out there, because you've got so much of it in such a connectivity that we need it to go. And lastly, I want to end on a quote from Duquette about the art on the Thoth Tarot card, because it's just the best thing that you can say about these people. He says, "It is a portrait of someone who is riding a rocket, and that can be very risky. If the rocket isn't aimed properly, he or she misses the target. If there's not enough fuel, he or she crashes. If there is too much fuel, the person explodes. But if everything goes well, it is the most spectacular of success." And I couldn't agree more. Thank you.